Daniel lived in a small house at the edge of a quiet town. The house had pale walls and a roof that creaked when the wind passed over it. Inside the house, everything felt still and heavy. Daniel moved slowly each day as if time itself had grown tired with him. He had once been a man full of plans and steady smiles. Now he carried silence like a shadow that never left. 2 years earlier, Daniel had lost his son Leo. The news had arrived on a gray afternoon and never truly ended. People said Leo was gone and that there was nothing more to know. They told Daniel to be strong and to accept what could not be changed. Daniel listened, but his heart never believed the story fully. Grief settled into him and stayed like a permanent guest. Every morning Daniel woke before sunrise. He sat near the window with a cup of weak tea in his hands. From that window he could see the narrow road outside. Leo used to walk down that road with a loose backpack and quick steps. Daniel still imagined hearing those steps in the early light. Each morning ended with the same quiet disappointment. Daniel had once worked as a mechanic in a small garage behind his house. He fixed old engines and helped neighbors without asking for much. Leo often sat nearby handing him tools and asking questions. The garage had been full of noise and laughter back then. After Leo was gone, Daniel locked the door and never reopened it. Dust slowly covered the tools as if time itself was giving up. The town had moved on in its own way. People nodded at Daniel when they passed him at the market. Some spoke kindly, while others avoided his eyes. Everyone knew his story, and no one wanted to reopen it. Daniel understood their distance, but it still hurt. Loss had made him visible and invisible at the same time. In the evenings Daniel walked to a low hill behind his house. From there he could see the lights of the town turning on one by one. Leo once stood there and said he wanted to see the world. Daniel remembered that moment clearly and painfully. He often spoke Leo's name into the air while standing there. The wind was the only thing that ever answered. On one quiet afternoon Daniel returned from the market with a small bag of bread. The sky was pale and the streets were nearly empty. As he reached his gate he noticed a small figure near the fence. A young girl was sitting on the ground with her knees pulled close. She held a cloth bag against her chest as if it held something precious. Her clothes were worn and her face showed both fear and courage. Daniel stopped walking and watched her for a moment. No one ever waited near his house anymore. The girl noticed him and stood up quickly. She looked at him with careful eyes that seemed older than her years. She asked if this was Daniel's house in a soft voice. Daniel nodded slowly and waited for her to continue. The girl said she needed to speak with him. When she spoke Leo's name Daniel felt his chest tighten. He asked her how she knew that name. The girl looked down and held her bag tighter. She said she had known Leo for a short time. She said she had carried a secret for too long. Daniel felt a familiar pain rise inside him. Over the years many people had shared stories about Leo. Some stories were kind and others were careless. Each one reopened wounds that never healed. Daniel told the girl he did not want false hope. He said he had already lost enough. The girl shook her head and stood very still. She said she was not there to ask for anything. She said fear had kept her silent before. She said the truth had become too heavy to hold alone. Her voice did not shake as she spoke. Her eyes held a seriousness Daniel could not ignore. Daniel opened the gate and invited her inside. The house felt colder as they entered together. They sat across from each other at the old kitchen table. The girl placed her cloth bag on the table without opening it. She took a slow breath and looked directly at Daniel. She said the story of Leo's death was not complete. Daniel felt his heart begin to race. His hands rested flat on the table to steady himself. The girl explained that on the night Leo disappeared something went wrong. She said Leo had tried to protect someone else. She said there were people who did not want the truth known. Daniel listened without interrupting as his world shifted. Memories rushed back into Daniel's mind. He remembered Leo leaving the house that evening. Leo had smiled and said he would be back soon. Daniel had not stopped him or asked questions. That regret had followed him every day since. Now the girl's words stirred something new inside him. The girl said she had seen things she did not understand back then. She said she had been scared and alone. She said adults had warned her to stay quiet. She said she believed Daniel deserved the truth. Her voice remained calm, but her hands trembled slightly. Daniel noticed and felt a deep ache of responsibility. Outside, the light began to fade as evening approached. Shadows stretched across the floor and walls. The house seemed to listen along with them. Daniel felt grief and hope mixing in a painful way. For the first time in years, his loss felt uncertain. The girl said this was only the beginning of what she knew. Daniel leaned back and took a slow breath. He realized that his mourning might have been built on a lie. The weight he carried suddenly felt different. He did not know whether to fear or welcome what was coming. The girl looked at him and waited patiently. Daniel knew his life was about to change forever. Daniel sat silently as the girl gathered her courage. The room felt heavier with every breath they took. The girl finally said her name was Mira. She explained that she lived on the far side of town near the old canal. Her family struggled, and she often worked small jobs to help them. Leo had been one of the few people who spoke to her kindly. Mira said she met Leo on an afternoon when she dropped her books. Leo helped her pick them up and walked with her for a short distance. They spoke about school and dreams and small things. Leo told her he wanted to leave town one day and see new places. Mira listened quietly and remembered his words clearly. That meeting was simple but meaningful to her. Over the following weeks, Mira saw Leo a few more times. They talked near the market and sometimes near the hill. Leo often asked if she was safe and if she needed help. Mira said he treated her like she mattered. She said that kindness stayed with her. She never expected it would lead to something painful. On the night Leo disappeared, Mira had been walking home late. She took a shortcut through a narrow street near the river. That area was usually quiet and empty at night. As she walked, she heard raised voices ahead. She slowed her steps and stayed close to the wall. That was when she saw Leo standing between her and two older boys. Mira said the boys were angry and demanding something. She did not know what they wanted from her. Leo stood firm and told them to leave her alone. His voice was calm but strong. Mira said she felt frozen and unable to move. The street felt too small for what was happening. The boys argued and stepped closer. Mira said fear filled her chest. She wanted to run, but her legs would not move. Leo told her to go and not look back. She hesitated, and that moment stayed in her memory. She said she finally turned and ran as fast as she could. Mira did not hear what happened next. She only knew that Leo did not follow her. The next day she heard people saying Leo was gone. Fear wrapped around her like a tight rope. She believed what happened was her fault. She stayed silent and avoided everyone. Daniel listened with his hands pressed together. His face showed pain, but he did not interrupt her. Mira continued and said the fear grew each day. She said people in town talked in whispers. Some said Leo caused trouble and others said it was an accident. Mira knew those stories were not true. Mira said she saw one of the boys days later. He looked nervous and avoided her eyes. She said she heard him argue with someone older. They spoke about silence and consequences. Mira realized there were people who wanted the truth buried. That knowledge kept her awake many nights. Daniel felt anger rise inside him. He remembered how quickly the town accepted the story they were given. No one asked questions or searched deeper. Daniel had trusted the words of officials and neighbors. Now that trust felt broken. His grief turned slowly into determination. Mira said she wanted to tell Daniel sooner. She said fear held her back every time. Her family depended on staying unnoticed. She worried speaking up would harm them. As time passed, the guilt became too heavy. She decided Daniel deserved to know everything. Daniel stood up and walked to the window. The road outside looked the same as always. He remembered Leo walking there with hope in his steps. Daniel felt both pride and pain hearing how his son acted. Leo had protected someone weaker than himself. That knowledge changed how Daniel saw his loss. Daniel turned back to Mira and thanked her. His voice was steady but filled with emotion. He said she showed courage by coming forward. Mira nodded and wiped her eyes quietly. She said she did not want praise. She only wanted the truth to be known. Daniel asked Mira if she had anything else. Mira opened the cloth bag slowly. Inside was a small notebook with worn pages. She said Leo dropped it during the struggle. She picked it up and kept it hidden. The notebook held names and places written carefully. Daniel took the notebook with shaking hands. He recognized Leo's handwriting immediately. The pages showed dates and notes that made little sense at first. Mira said Leo told her he was worried about something. She said he believed someone was being treated unfairly. Leo planned to speak up but feared trouble. Daniel felt a deep sense of responsibility. He realized Leo may have been caught in something larger. The notebook felt like a key to unanswered questions. Daniel promised Mira he would be careful. He told her she would not face this alone. Mira listened and nodded slowly. Night had fully fallen outside the house. The room was lit by a single soft lamp. Daniel felt his mourning shift into purpose. For years he believed his role was only to grieve. Now he felt called to seek the truth. Leo's story was not over yet. Mira stood to leave and thanked Daniel for listening. Daniel walked her to the door and watched her step into the night. He felt fear for what lay ahead. He also felt strength he had not known in years. The path before him was uncertain and heavy. But for the first time Daniel felt he was moving forward. Daniel spent the night reading the notebook again and again. Each page felt like a quiet message from his son. The notes spoke about places near the river and names Daniel did not recognize. Some lines mentioned fear and others mentioned hope. Daniel realized Leo had been trying to understand something dangerous. Sleep never came and morning arrived quietly. At sunrise Daniel made a decision. He cleaned the dust from the old garage and opened the door. The smell of oil and metal filled the air. It reminded him of better days with Leo by his side. Daniel packed food, water, and the notebook into a small bag. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. Daniel first visited the canal area where Mira lived. He wanted to understand the place Leo tried to protect. The canal was narrow and lined with broken stones. Small homes stood close together with faded paint. People watched Daniel carefully as he walked. They recognized him but said little. Daniel asked about the night Leo disappeared. Some people looked away and others shook their heads. Fear was clear in their eyes. One older man finally spoke quietly. He said there were people who controlled things from the shadows. He warned Daniel not to dig too deep. Daniel thanked the man and continued walking. Every warning only strengthened his resolve. He followed the notes in the notebook carefully. One location stood out near an abandoned storage building. Daniel remembered seeing that building years ago. It was a place most people avoided. When Daniel reached the building, the air felt heavy. The door was broken and hung loosely. Inside, the light was dim and dust covered the floor. Daniel moved slowly and listened carefully. He noticed markings on the wall that matched Leo's notes. His heart pounded as memories rushed back. Daniel found signs that people met there secretly. There were empty containers and torn papers. It was clear something hidden had taken place. Daniel imagined Leo standing there watching and writing. Pride mixed with fear inside him. Leo had been brave and curious. As Daniel left the building, he noticed someone following him. A tall man stood at a distance pretending to check his phone. Daniel kept walking and turned into a narrow street. The footsteps behind him grew closer. Daniel stopped suddenly and turned around. The man froze and stared back. The man warned Daniel to forget the past. His voice was calm but carried a threat. Daniel replied that the past mattered. He said the truth would come out. The man stepped back and disappeared into the street. Daniel knew he was not alone anymore. That evening Daniel returned home exhausted. Mira was waiting near the gate. She said she heard people talking about Daniel's questions. Fear was clear on her face. Daniel told her he would protect her. He said the truth was bigger than fear. Daniel showed Mira what he found at the building. Mira confirmed that Leo mentioned that place before. She said Leo believed someone was being hurt there. They sat together planning their next steps. Daniel realized he could not do this alone. Trust began to grow between them. The next day, Daniel visited the town records office. He requested old reports and documents. The worker hesitated but eventually handed them over. Daniel noticed missing pages and altered dates. The truth had been carefully hidden. His anger turned into quiet focus. Daniel spent days connecting details from the notebook and records. Patterns began to form slowly. Leo had discovered something illegal near the river. Powerful people wanted silence. Leo's courage had cost him dearly. Daniel felt both pain and pride. Mira helped by speaking to others quietly. Some people shared small pieces of information. Fear still controlled many voices. But cracks were beginning to form. The truth was pushing its way out. Daniel felt Leo's presence guiding him. One night Daniel stood again on the hill behind his house. The town lights flickered below him. This time he did not whisper Leo's name in grief. He spoke it with strength and promise. Daniel knew the path ahead was dangerous. But he was no longer mourning in silence. Daniel felt the weight of the truth pressing on him as the final pieces came together. Days of quiet work had turned fear into clarity inside his mind. He understood now that Leo did not disappear by chance. Leo had stepped into danger to protect others. That knowledge gave Daniel strength instead of pain. He knew it was time to bring everything into the light. Daniel met Mira early one morning near the hill. The air was cool and the town was still asleep. They reviewed every note and memory one last time. Mira shared names she had heard whispered. Daniel compared them with the records he collected. The truth stood clear and steady between them. Daniel decided to speak openly for the first time. He arranged a small gathering at the community hall. Word spread quickly through the town. Some people came out of curiosity and others out of concern. Fear still lived in many hearts. But silence had grown too heavy to carry. Daniel stood at the front of the room holding Leo's notebook. His voice was calm and steady as he began. He spoke about Leo not as a loss but as a person. He shared how Leo cared for others and stood up for fairness. People listened more closely than they ever had before. The room filled with quiet attention. Daniel revealed what Leo had discovered near the river. He explained how certain people used power to hide the truth. He showed records with missing details and altered facts. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Faces showed shock and recognition. The town began to understand what had been hidden. Mira stepped forward and shared her story. Her voice was soft but clear. She spoke of the night Leo protected her. She spoke of fear and silence that followed. Many people lowered their eyes in shame. Her courage shifted the mood of the room. Others slowly found their voices. One by one they shared small truths. Pieces that never made sense now fit together. The power of shared truth broke years of silence. Those who tried to hide the past were no longer unseen. The town changed in that moment. The days that followed brought real action. Outside authorities arrived to review the records. Questions were asked that could not be ignored. Those responsible were forced to face consequences. The fear that once controlled the town began to fade. Justice moved quietly but firmly. Daniel returned home one evening feeling lighter. The house no longer felt empty. Grief still existed, but it no longer ruled him. Leo's courage lived on through the truth. Daniel sat near the window and watched the road. This time he smiled softly. Mira visited often after that. Daniel helped her family find support. The town treated her with new respect. She no longer walked with fear. Daniel saw Leo's kindness reflected in her strength. Their bond felt like family. Daniel reopened the garage behind his house. The tools were cleaned and placed back in order. He worked with purpose once again. The sound of metal and movement filled the space. Neighbors stopped by and offered help. Life slowly rebuilt itself. On a clear evening, Daniel walked to the hill again. The town lights shone steadily below him. He spoke Leo's name with peace in his heart. He thanked him for his courage and care. Daniel understood now that loss was not the end. Truth had changed his life forever.